anyone wishing to speak. Anyone wishing to speak can come to the podium, state your name and address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. If the subject matter, if it is an item that is already on the agenda, I would ask that you just simply wait till we get to that item on the agenda and raise your hand, and we can get your comments then. Does anybody want to raise their hand? Okay, we're going to move on. We have a young man, Mr. Gibson Griffith, a student at Oyster River Middle School. Please come up.
Do you want to get here?
And he's going to talk to us about how one kid can make a difference. Now, Gibson, I know you're already a pretty popular guy. I see you on Facebook a lot, and I hear about a lot of the things you do. So I'm looking forward to your presentation.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Speak up.
Hello.
Hello,
I'm
there it is.
Gibson.
You found it.
I run the One Kid Can Make a Difference Club, and I bring volunteer opportunities to youth in need. So what I normally do is I have a meeting, and we hang out for a little bit, and then we do an organization where we do a project for the community. A couple of projects I've done is poetry critics for homeless people, holiday decorations for nursing homes.
Can I ask you to speak up some more?
Microphone maybe move it a little, yeah. There you go.
The roadside cleanup with the youth in Stratford County. That was a really fun one. A lot of kids didn't want to do that one, but we actually made a really fun game out of it, and it was pretty cool. Art supply drive for the nursing homes, residents stuck in quarantine. The mail train for the children's home in Dover. And collecting everything needed for a foster job, which I had 15 kids and 15 people involved for that project. One of my newest ones was vetting for the ASPCA this month. I do one every single month. I'm really proud of a boy named Declan. He's 14 years old, and he volunteered to do a project of the vetting for the ASPCA by himself. He did basically everything by himself, and that was very, very nice, and that was one of my favorite projects. We do one each month, and it's always different. There's never the same project, but if it is something like a roadside cleanup, it's always in a different place. And that's those are all my projects I've done. And I am doing, my newest one is for Camp Allen in Bedford, New Hampshire. It's a camp for disabled children and adults, which I have a lot of. It's a snack and food drive, which is going to be a big one. I believe. Oh, right, getting to the big part. So how I get my volunteers is I use Facebook mostly. I have a Facebook group which I put out posts on to gather my volunteers, to tell them it's usually at the church, there's a little meeting happening where we do the activity and we have snacks and stuff. And that always happens, like I said, every month. Also, we haven't had it because of COVID lately, so we've been doing it with all sorts of different people. And I also use Facebook to let people, I ask people on Facebook to tell me what they want to do for one. And I've had a lot of them happen that people have told me that I want to do.
Right.
Yeah, all right. Thank you.
That's incredible. I'm gonna give you a round of applause, because that's kind of amazing work. Yeah. I have a couple questions for you. So you have done an incredible job of getting people to want to participate. What do you think gets them off the couch, out of their house, whatever, to want to come and do things with you?
So I find that when you tell people that something's fun is gonna happen,
Cool. So maybe
they're like, oh, this is gonna be awesome. And I've told them they're gonna help people,
Mhm.
and people love helping people.
Yeah. Tell me more about that. What does it do for you when you're volunteering, when you're donating your time or energy?
I feel amazing.
Yeah.
I feel like I am actually doing something very important.
Mhm.
And it is truly, when you do something for other people in your community, it does help. And even if it is small, it always helps out somebody else. And that's the point of my club. It's for community service, and I strive for 500 hours a year,
Wow.
500 or more. And I've completed that for the last 3 years without fail.
That's incredible. I think that one thing I hear a lot is it's hard to get volunteers, and it's hard to get people involved. And I think you really set an incredible example for a town, and I just wanted you to be able to share some of the things you've been doing, because I think all of us really benefit. It's hard to ask for help sometimes, but if you realize the person who's giving the help also benefits from the situation, maybe that helps. And also to get out there and try some new things, do some volunteering. Makes sense.
Do you have any ideas about what the town could do to help you?
No? That's a really good question.
Yes.
I think really the point is to help the town, but something that could help is maybe telling other kids about this. Because the more people I have, the more people I can reach to volunteer.
Yeah.
Because that's normal. There's two things. I said the first thing, which is to help the community, and it's to teach kids that don't know how to volunteer to do that. That's one of my really key important things. When I teach a kid to volunteer, I find it's actually usually word of mouth at that point, because they will tell other kids about it and they will come and join. Very fun. I don't think there's anything I need help with. I think I'm doing pretty good.
Okay. Listen, if you feel that strong and you don't think you need anything from us, that's fine. I just want you to know that if you do need something from us, you come see us.
Absolutely.
Good to know.
We're really
Okay.
impressed.
Thank you.
And thank you for everything you're doing.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much.
Great.
I'll take the paper.
Okay. Steve Boyd, Public Works Director.
Thanks, you guys.
So I'm here tonight because a while ago, the board had given a directive they didn't want anyone in the transfer station to work more than 12 hours a day. More than 10 hours a day. We've been working more than 10 hours a day now since March because of staffing shortfalls. So just here to ask if I can get permission to work 12-hour days as needed until we fix our staffing issues. That way I'm just asking, because the directive was given, but it was given a while ago and it wasn't given to me. I just know it was given. So more or less just to cover myself in case someone said something.
So you're just, right now, you just want to be able to have the flexibility to extend the work hours to 12 hours when necessary?
Yeah, I mean, I've been doing it. There's been a guy constantly doing it since March, but still need to ask.
Understand.
Yeah,
Questions?
it's just,
Do I
it's
need a
sad that that's the
motion?
place that we're in.
No, I just want to also put it out there, we discussed at a previous meeting that if this continues, we may also need to talk about changing the hours at the transfer station.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know that it's fair to the employees that work there
Yeah.
to have to work consistent 12-hour shifts.
Right.
So we may need to make some other changes until we can get fully staffed again.
Okay. Scott, you have any comments?
Can we ask Steve to give us an update? We spoke about the kind of, I don't know if it's a new position or whatever, in offering partial benefits. Can Steve and/or Julie give us an update in terms of what the status of that is, please?
I thought I had somebody, but when we told them what the partial benefits were, they weren't interested. So that's the only one we have on that right now.
Did you hear that, Scott?
Yep.
Okay.
So the ad is still out there, Steve?
Yeah,
Okay.
So is that?
And go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, the thing I was going to ask is, I would consider doing a reduction in terms of hours at the transfer station before I would be interested in expanding their thing to 12 hours, personally.
The person that is interested in the benefits, they only want part-time, they don't want full-time, is that correct?
I'm sure they take full-time, but that's not what the ad is, so.
Is there anything that we can do as a board to help with the full-time, as we have an unknown thing? I know we have a problem down the road if things change, but is there anything we can do to take somebody on that's full-time right now and then kind of work out the challenges down the road if we have a return? Oh, sorry, I apologize. Did you hear any of that?
We'd
Mr.
have to know the cost implications of that, Katrin.
Yep.
And I know Julie's run the numbers for the partial, but we'd have to run them for the full-time person, just to see what that is.
I just feel like if we have a good person who's able to work and ready to go, and we have an open position, we maybe just some flexibility in this to get the staffing.
So, and Steve, in your opinion, is this particular person that wasn't interested when they found exactly what the benefits were, are they qualified? Are they somebody that you would hire, or what's your opinion?
Yeah, I would hire them.
Yes, he said he would hire them.
No, I heard it, yep.
Okay.
Hey, just so you know, the microphones are tied to the phone.
Yeah.
So
okay.
he can hear the microphones, got it.
So Julie knows the person in question.
Yeah,
So, I think it'd be good for the town.
so, Julie, I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Mm.
What is the financial implications of that for, I guess, fiscal 22?
So, I was going to talk about this
Oh,
when it
okay.
was my turn to go, but I can
Okay.
talk a little bit about it now if you'd like me to.
Sure.
So in fiscal '21, we are actually going to be over budget in our health insurance for the first time
Yep,
since I've been here, so almost 10 years.
Yeah.
We had a lot of people transition from the buyout to a
Yeah.
health insurance plan. Some of those people had family plans. We had employees who had single plans get married, so that increased the costs.
yep,
So remember, we base our budgeting for the health insurance on the lives that exist at the time we're doing the budgeting. So we definitely would not have enough money, as it looks right now, in the health insurance budget in fiscal '22
Yeah.
to take on an additional full-time employee unless the board transferred money from somewhere else.
yep. Do we know what that amount is that would be the difference?
Well, it would depend, well, the health insurance, say, the family plan is probably $25,000 a year.
Okay,
And then there's other costs, there'd be the retirement system costs.
okay,
And just for ease of math, just say that's 12% of whatever the employee's salary would be.
okay,
So $4,800, another $4,800 a year for that.
yep,
And then there'd be a few other costs. So
and the differential between what Steve's budgeted for a part-time person versus the salary for a full-time person, the salary part of it.
That's actually not the biggest chunk of money that we would have to come up with, because you're only looking at the difference between 32 hours and 40 hours.
Okay,
It's the personnel costs that are more of a budgeting problem.
We had
so
less,
it's over,
go ahead.
so it's over 30,000?
Yes,
Okay.
But we might have hired somebody for a potential down the road that we might need, so we're not sure how it's all gonna work out.
I mean,
Yeah,
my
well-
advice right now would be to keep looking for the part-time person,
Yeah,
and not for very long, because
Yeah.
again, we don't want to do that to the existing employees to be short-staffed.
It's been how long that we've been looking?
March.
March,
For-
so.
We've been short since March 26th.
Right, okay.
but the part-time position with benefits was just recently though, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
2 weeks ago.
Right, but the short staffed, yeah.
So is your thought, Katrina, to go for another period of time to see if we can find somebody? Or Julie's
Julia.
thoughts?
That's what I recommend right now. I'm not saying that we wait for months, but
Yeah,
maybe a few more weeks.
I agree with Julie.
so maybe we go until mid-July?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think picking a date makes sense.
Why don't we go to the end of July?
Okay,
Because that will let
we'll
me
go to the
know,
end of July.
that'll let me know a lot more.
Okay,
You don't think we'll lose the person who's applied? And you think you guys can handle the shifts? I just don't.
Like next week, the only full-time person in the transfer station's on vacation, so it's 100% highway personnel for a week and a half, so we'll make it work.
So what can we do about that? I feel like we have such a short amount of notice to tell the
You
people.
can't, it is what it is, we'll just deal with it.
But maybe down the road, I think we need to give people a little bit of warning so they know, because we know what happens. It's hard to get the message out that they've changed that number of hours. It's open. On the other hand, I agree, I don't think that's fair to ask people to do 12 hours. Time after time.
I think unless something changes within the next 2 weeks, maybe Steve would come back at the next meeting with a recommendation for reduced hours.
Yeah.
Okay.
okay.
Did you hear that, Scott?
Yep,
Okay.
in the interim, can we ask, Julie, can you give us the specific cost from what Steve's already got budgeted for this particular position versus if we went to full-time?
Yep.
So we'll have that piece of information. I know I kind of sprung it on you. I know we've asked for the part-time, going to like 32 or whatever, but can you give us the number that if that person was to go to full?
Yep.
We've also
Okay, thank you.
saved a lot of money in the town not paying someone all this time, is that correct? So there has been a
Well,
lot
it's a
of,
different fiscal year.
absolutely, I
Different
understand.
fiscal year.
I understand.
Okay.
Thank you.
You'll come back at the next meeting then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we ask, just a minute, can we ask Steve to give us an update on the meeting that he stood in for me for Lamprey, so you guys understand what was going on there?
So the Lamprey Regional Cooperative, I know Carrie knows about the Lamprey, do you know?
I do.
Okay. So the ash and sludge landfill in Somersworth has 3 feet of water on top of the liner. The leachate system's not draining into the tanks that go into the Somersworth wastewater treatment plant, which means the landfill's failing. And there's the buildup of leachate tells them that. They don't know why it's built up. I know they opened 4 of the 5 manholes they could find and they were all full of water. There's some liquid in one of the 15,000 gallon holding tanks. So they had an emergency meeting of the Lamprey Cooperative on Friday morning. And they wanted to take, so the original, the work to fix everything, or to find out what needs to get fixed is $46,400. And then they wanted to take an additional 50-something thousand dollars out of the closure budget that's there for contingency to, and so that so we voted to have an engineer go figure out what's actually broken, what valves need to get fixed. And then the contingencies, if they need to jet the pipes and do a whole bunch of other work, so they voted to take $200,000 out of the closure fund to pay for it. They may not use all 200,000, they may only use 75. The reason they voted to do all 200 at once and not the 46,400 is it's hard to get people on an emergency notice to go do the vote, so they just rather done one meeting, done it all at once and moved on. But that work is starting hopefully before, they want to have it all done, I think, before the winter.
Is that possible to be covered under the I'm forgetting the name of it, the rescue plan, the changing in the water runoff, no?
No, the issue, Katrina, is their reserve account for the closure account has over $300,000 in it.
Okay.
So that's where this funding is coming from. But I just thought the board should be aware of it because they're depleting potentially
That funding.
almost all of that particular fund. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Steve.
Yep.
All right, thank you, Steve. Get a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
I'll be here for a little bit longer.
All right. All right, we're gonna move on. Select person Casper.
Great, so I have been asking some questions about the Stratford Regional Planning Commission. And it appears that we have, as the town of Lee, 2 votes on things related to, right now, just transportation. However, by not going to these meetings, we are losing out on that option, as well as being able to understand what's going on in the region. In order to join the commission, the official way, we would have to spend $5,400, but they're willing to have us there, not paying dues. And I suggested that maybe we do that for a while so we understand why this is an important group and decide, down the road. Because I think, the budget's already done for this year, so I let them know that we didn't have the money this year, but it might be nice for us to learn a little bit more about what they're doing and to at least use that vote that we have making these decisions. So generally, the planning commission chooses those 2 people, and then we would,
Planning board.
I said commission, sorry, planning board, would suggest those people. I said that if there's people that are not willing, I would be willing to put the extra energy in, because I just think it's a really important thing for our town, but it would be great if we had people that were interested. I know they have a couple meetings coming up on I have it written down. Next 2 weeks.
Maybe I'm confused. Did Karen Rossi did we have a discussion with her for quite a while back about?
Well, we haven't budgeted to be members of the Stratford Regional Planning Commission for a couple of years.
Right. And they said last year that they helped us with something that they got grants for $50,000 for us to work on the traffic light thing, and we do pay a la carte, which is a nice option. One of the things that they are very frustrated with is that they can get the funding to do the things they need to do because they can say, well, these towns have bought in, they've given their dues, and so then they go out and they get the grants that helps them to pay those bills. And so they were kind, but a little frustrated that, many other towns are participating and we're not. And they said, even if we aren't paying our dues, it doesn't make sense to not participate, absolutely.
So, Katrina, I assume you've had a conversation with Karen Rossi about this?
You know what, I didn't have a conversation with Karen Rossi about it. I looked into it, talking to them, but no, I didn't. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
You should probably have a conversation with her
Well,
to understand why we're not paying dues.
Right, we did talk about it I talked about it before I called, and that's actually true. I have spoken to her about it. And she said that the select board chose to stop paying those dues. I'm not sure. I think when we discussed it, it's because you can get the same things without paying dues à la carte. So I guess in the past, everything was sort of quote unquote free once you paid your dues. And now there still is a fee for things that you need to do, it's just discounted rates. And so economically speaking, it makes sense
Yeah.
to not pay those dues.
Yeah.
On the other
Yeah.
hand, I do think it's also, you know, at what point is it our responsibility to participate in the region and to get the grant? We did utilize those grants for $50,000. So I think that's why, to me, having a couple people go and spend the next year learning more and really deciding, are we getting a benefit
Yeah.
from it? And then is it responsible for us to continue to do so for free, or is it something
Yeah.
that we should be paying for? That gives us a lot of time to go through it.
Yep, that sounds okay. The thing for me is, it was based on Karen's, I guess, recommendation or the information she brought, that it didn't make sense for us to participate because those grants they get through the federal programs, they're gonna get anyways. There's
Right.
no, because Lee's not participating, doesn't mean they don't get it.
Right.
But I would have a conversation with her, and she can give you the history on the whole thing and why she recommended
Yeah,
not
no.
to proceed.
Yeah, and I definitely understand that. I think, like I said, I didn't know that we could
Yep.
still participate. And if we have votes that affect us in transportation issues, it doesn't make
Yeah,
sense not to use
that's
them.
fine. That's fine. Yeah, there usually is a representative and an alternate. So I don't know if there's anybody else that might be interested as well.
Yeah, so that's a great thing for anyone who's out there that's interested in something like this.
Yeah.
Reach out to the planning board, I guess.
That's good.
Yeah, so no cost to us and a way to get a little bit more input and influence.
So where do you want to
Yeah.
move on? Where do you want to move on with it? Do we want to wait and talk to Karen and bring it up at the next meeting? Do we want to do a motion now?
We're not asking to pay dues, we're just asking to have people go.
Right,
Yeah.
oh, okay,
Yeah, so no money will be spent, nothing will cost us, we'll only get benefit.
okay.
And
So
And
can
Katrin
we
would have to be
Yeah.
appointed by the planning board.
Right, so I'm only offering myself because if there's no one else that is possible, because I don't want them to come back and say, well, no one wants to do it, so then we don't do it.
Okay,
But I think it'd be great if we could have other people that were involved. Again, volunteering feels great, good thing to do, so hopefully we can get people participating, but I'm just a backup if there's not any interest in the town.
so why don't we put in an e-cry that says maybe there's an alternate position available and you can do the primary one or something like that?
I think we
maybe?
should put in the e-cry that there's 2 positions available, absolutely, and let people know,
Okay.
and then hopefully they can reach out, and then go forward from there.
So if nobody's interested, then you'll just do it.
Correct.
Okay, all right, sounds good.
Do we need to do a motion to, no, okay.
No, well, you can have a conversation if the board's in favor of it and with the planning board appoint you.
Yeah,
And then it comes back to the select board.
Great,
Yep.
okay, so, great, okay.
all right. Thank you, Scott. We'll move on. Town Hall Renovation Committee. John Tappan.
Wasn't the remote up on
Is this remote turned
the
on?
juice on it?
Cross your fingers, Scott, Mr. Bugbee.
And you have to push the button twice.
Power?
I don't see a light yet.
There's the little blue one, but nothing to do yet.
That was twice.
It takes a while sometimes for it to warm
Oh,
up.
there
Oh,
it
there it
is.
goes.
There's something.
There it comes, there it comes.
Yes, it's
The
definitely.
lighting is,
Great.
is that too dark for people?
Yes.
Oh, whoa, that's too bright. So
Yeah,
you can
yeah, I got a
alternate or
keyboard
put
with
the
no
back-
light here.
I think the backlights.
Yes,
One or
turn it
the other.
on.
That's the front. And then, so try the other one. Oh, I thought it did.
Well,
That's the
it's-
options.
That's a little bit hard.
Yeah. What does it take to sign in with a public account?
I don't think there's a password.
You're right.
Really?
Okay.
Great.
Mouse here.
That's right.
It was easy with the Zoom.
Yes.
Yes.
Just shared your screen.
So. for most.
Oh, that's here.
That's where it
It's all coming back to you, right?
is. Yeah, sort of.
Until closing.
Oh, yes. And we're getting there. Okay. So I have a split system here where I have my notes here because we don't have a presentation view. Yep, okay. Town Center Site Development Plan Redux. Town Hall Renovation Committee, THRC. And at its last meeting, the Select Board gave a 2-week charge to the THRC to, quote, determine what the issues are that need to be considered with doing the renovation of the Town Hall, the library, its renovation and expansion, and the new well and septic system. Note that tonight's presentation is to identify the issues and what needs to be done. Town Center Site Development Plan. This is a repeat slide of our April 15th presentation. It was read then, so I'm going to read it now. The town office lease is assumed to last for 9 years, and so planning is needed on multiple fronts, including capital funding, sequencing of infrastructure construction at the town center site, critical path scheduling. Sorry. Critical path scheduling of all the building projects over the next several years, and select board decisions on future energy and environmental policies for the town. All in support of finalizing the town center development. Conditions. The select board is committed to the renovation, that's the rehabilitation of the town hall. Construction and site work is expected to proceed in phases. The first phase construction sequence should not require planned rework. The first phase should allow for the subsequent phase of construction and site work to proceed efficiently and with minimal disturbance to the first phase area. The design should aim to meet all town zoning requirements. Issues. Decisions that need to be made before site engineering is hired. What is the preferred location of the well and the water treatment system? What sources are to be served by the septic system? How many parking spaces are desired in the first phase? How many accessible, van accessible, and delivery spaces are required? Will the museum be relocated? Should putting utility lines below ground be considered? Will there be a solar energy system on site? Should earth-coupled heat pumps be considered? And we need a full site development concept for cost-effective connections to future construction. And the last issue is, how can the town pay for these projects? Schedule. To decide and document answers to the preliminary first phase questions could take 3 months and could start now. Developing funding options could take 1 to 1.5 months and could start now. Produce site plan concepts could take 2 months and could also start now. Review of site plan concepts by stakeholders could take 1 to 2 months and could start after some of the site plan concepts are available. Modify and truncate site plan concepts could start when the concepts are completed. Request bids, receive and select for the first phase of civil engineering could take a month and then the site engineering services are hired. New well. The town center has a transient, non-community water system. The design flow should be based on the expected 8-year site build-out plus next generation additions, including expanded library with a future addition, town hall rehabilitated as assembly space, new office building on site with future addition, and some allowance for other buildings. The septic system will serve the library with its planned addition, a future addition to the library, the town hall rehabilitated as assembly space. The future office building might be included if it's determined to be close enough. Whether the system serves the town hall annex or any other source is to be determined. Parking. First phase should include parking for my cursor just stopped working. There we go. First phase should include parking for the library with the planned addition. Some
It's working.
no, it's working. Chris. Sorry. Sheesh. I'll just leave it there. Some occupancy of town hall as assembly space and the museum. Snow storage areas should be identified, and fire equipment access should be designed in and should include the planned fire cistern. Historical Society Museum. Should the Historical Society Museum be relocated? The distance from the museum platform to the 50-foot front setback does not allow for parking stalls on both sides of a parking lot aisle. Relocation could allow for some parking spaces that are closer to the town hall and the library, and more space for future library use. Utilities. Should the town pay for a detailed cost estimate for placing all utilities underground? Energy and environmental policy. Without a stated energy and environmental policy, the town will be proceeding in a haphazard way through several construction projects over the next few years. Solar energy. The building renovation, construction, and site work planning now going on provides the opportunity to integrate solar energy systems rather than adding them as an afterthought. Earth-coupled heat pumps. Current library and town hall construction plans include several air-coupled mini-split heating and cooling units. Earth-coupled heat pumps have a higher upfront cost, but provide higher efficiency and may provide lower life cycle cost. The existing site plan. On the site right now, we have the town hall, the tool shed, the library, the museum, town hall annex, the parish house, 25 parking spaces, and somewhere an office space to be built. Fire cistern. The cistern will be located a safe distance from all structures. The cistern will be located on the loop road to allow for single direction travel for the tankers being filled. The area immediately surrounding the town hall and the library is too congested for the cistern, so the cistern needs to be located on the newly acquired land. Some sample site plan concepts. The following site plan concepts are samples only. They have not been reviewed or evaluated. Viewer discretion is requested. Here's the sample site plan that was presented in December. This shows the library addition, a driveway with a throat length of just over 30 feet and 32 parking spaces. Here's a sample full site plan concept. This shows a second driveway opposite Wednesday Hill Road, a loop road connecting the two driveways, an office building, 47 parking spaces, and the fire cistern located along the loop road. Here's a small example of a problem that could occur if the first phase is designed without consideration of what might be built next. In this case, 2 areas of new pavement would need to be removed to accommodate the future plan. Next steps for the committee, page 1. Produce site plan concepts for review by highway, fire, police, library, planning, zoning, and building inspection, select board, conservation, heritage, historical, and the public. Next steps for the committee, page 2. Decide and document the following: preferred location of well and water treatment system, sources to be served by the septic system, target number of parking spaces in first phase, including accessible, van accessible, and delivery, museum location, existing or relocated, should below-ground utilities be considered, will there be a solar energy system on site, should earth-coupled heat pumps be considered. Next steps for the committee, page 3. Modify the most favored site plan concepts based on input from the stakeholders. Truncate the site plan concepts to a first phase site work concept. Seek first phase civil engineering design bids. And develop funding options for presentation to the select board. Next steps for the committee, page 4. Possible subcommittee tasks. Determine town center electricity use now and predicted. Put some numbers to pervious paving costs, savings, and pros and cons. And put some numbers to initial evaluation of earth-coupled heat pumps for town center buildings. And that's it. Are there questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
From the presentation, which I realize you put a lot of work in, is it saying that none of this has been done?
No. What we were tasked with was coming back to you with what needs to be considered. So we intentionally did not put in, there's many of these questions we already know the answers to. There's many of them we don't. But we intentionally did not put in those where we think we know the answers, because we wanted to focus on, here's the list of what needs to be done, here's the period over time of which we think it could be done. I think that one of the things that is, even where we know the answers, one of the things that is missing is having all of those answers in an arrangement, a document, which would go to, as part of the RFQ for the site engineering, so that the site engineers would have all of those answers that we've, either the ones we've already know the answers to, or those ones we have to come up with.
If we looked at going back X years, I don't know how far, the TCVC and then a transition to the THRC, and looked at all the product they put together, would it answer some of this?
Well, if you go back to TCVC 1 and TCVC 2, there were, for example, there were differences there. In TCVC 1, the museum was moved. In 2, we didn't even talk about the museum stayed. So there's an example of a question that you go back to previous work and it hasn't been decided.
I mean,
There's-
the issue that's hiding in the closet is whether the voters, once we come up with a price tag for all this, is whether the voters are gonna buy into it. And then it's a matter, I think, of maybe carving out some pieces where there's some alternatives where they say, no, we're not gonna spend 40 million for this. Well, okay, here's a $20 million renovation. I don't know.
You can take off a 0, but not a lot more. Well, that's why we listed funding options. And I think that also brings us back to the that spreadsheet formerly called the CIFP,
Yeah,
which we've changed the name to FPT. It's the Select Board FPT. That's what we're recommending. Select Board Financial Planning Tool. And that's to look at those items that are in there and for the Select Board to make decisions on what can be funded when. What would the funding, reasonable funding look like over the next few years?
but John, isn't there, for instance, while we're replanning all of this, are we going to be doing something? I mean, are we gonna start working on Town Hall to renovate it? Are we gonna do something with the museum to move it, or whatever it is we wanna do? I mean, are we gonna be making progress while we're trying to figure out what the whole project's about?
Well, right now, for the rehab of the Town Hall and the site work, we don't have the money. You add up the funds that are available, plus what's going to be added in the coming fiscal year, and top of my head, we have 2/3. If we completely exhausted those, and if nothing else comes up. So what I'm telling you right now is, you asked us what needs to be done to move it for the Town Hall project, for the site work, the library, the design of the site around the library. And the bad news is right now, we don't have the money for it.
What I'm asking is, can we not make some progress while we're trying to figure out what the entire project is gonna be? That's.
The committee all along has been saying that right now we have an opportunity because all of the buildings at Town Center are in play over the next few years, including possibility of a building or buildings that's not there yet. And that needs to happen over the next 8 years. And that's an unusual opportunity now to look at it in a holistic way, as one of the architects volunteered in a previous meeting, to look at it in a holistic way. And instead of making decisions piecemeal, to be able to make decisions that make sense when you look at the whole package. And the truth is, right now, when I look at the funding that we have listed as the cost of all these pieces, I don't see it happening. I really don't. Right now, if you take off all these projects that we added into the financial planning tool, all the Town Center projects, the things that are needed for this building and so forth, over the next half dozen years, if you take those all out, if you only look at what's in the CIP, plus the purchases that the Select Board has already approved that were not in the CIP, you need to increase appropriations to reserve funds next year by roughly $160,000 more than what was put in this year. And that's not putting anything toward these other projects. So yes, there is a very big funding hole.
Okay, so let me just ask one more question while the library people are here. Have we resolved, should I call it a conflict or issues or whatever between the library and problems that you brought up, et cetera, relative to the septic system and so on and so forth? Have we at least gotten that, whether it's negotiated or how we got there? So
My understanding from the motion that was made at the last meeting is that the select board had decided that the site engineering should be done not on a building by building basis, but on site by site basis, meaning this first phase, which is is probably something a little beyond the pre-2018 parcel that the town owned. So it probably extends a little bit into the new land, that you should do the site engineering for all of that at once. That's been the recommendation of the Conservation Commission. It's been the recommendation of our committee. It is not reasonable to try to do site engineering for handling runoff one building at a time. I mean, just look at where that building is. If you ignore the other buildings around it, if you ignore the parking lot, if you ignore what changes you might make to the parking lot, then whatever you design for green infrastructure for that building is either going to be in the way of or inadequate for when you consider the rest of the parcel. And so for good low-impact design, you need to consider all of the impervious surfaces. And we got a lot of them right there, in a tight area, in the Aquifer Conservation District, where that's a big issue. And in all of our past projects, TCVC1 and TCVC2, part of the site engineering, or part of the site design cost and part of the site construction cost was all of that green engineering and green infrastructure for properly handling runoff from parking lots and roofs and so forth. And that's rain gardens, that's infiltration swales, and so forth.
Can I ask some questions? So I have a couple observations. First of all, one thing that is very concerning to me is that we own a lot of buildings, all of them in some state of disrepair, not being cared for properly, including the one we're in right now. We don't seem to let go of a building when it no longer has a full function in the town, and then we are responsible for caring for it and upkeep, and what we're doing right now is we're just sort of owning a lot of spaces and not caring for them. So for me, I think we talked about having a survey, and I think that we really need the input of the entire town to understand what are the things that we need to keep and preserve because they matter to the people of the town, and what are the things that we can let go of so that we aren't paying, $10,000 for painting and $20,000 for a roof or whatever the numbers are going to be. These all add up, and we have so many things that we're holding on to, and I absolutely 100% appreciate wanting to maintain the historical nature. I just think that we need to make sure those questions are asked of the public. So first of all, I think we need to know what are we going to hold on to, what are we not. I think town hall is still a conversation that needs to be had. I personally would love the idea of restoring. I think most people do, but I don't know what the residents of the town feel. And if I'm going to look at a building that costs $600,000-$700,000 to restore, I think it needs to be a discussion. So there's a lot of things that I think we need to be looking at. I also think that we need to think about, are these buildings going to make it through changes in climate? Are they ones that we can save, or should we be putting that money more wisely into buildings that are more able to go into the future? So I think that there's a lot of things that need to be answered. I also think that we have a library that's been frustrated for a very long time. I think what you mentioned last time, is that we need to allow movement in that area and make some decisions for the library. That's why we wanted to know what were the things that need to happen for the addition going forward. There's some new information that I've been given about the cost to restore the library that are concerning. And I just think that we have to start looking holistically. There is an end to the amount of money that we can get from the town. And we have, every single department in this town is struggling to figure out how to keep employees. We have every single person, you go talk to any department head except for the town hall office, that we don't know how to staff, and people are working way too long and hours that are not acceptable, and we don't know how to replace them. So at some point, we have to start thinking, is this building worth losing another fireman, another police officer? Is it worth, exhausted people at the transfer station? And if it is, then great, then we should take care of it properly, and we should treat it with that kind of respect. So I think there's a lot of pieces of this puzzle. I do want to respect, I think the most important thing on the docket is understanding how to help the library going forward, how to make wise fiscal decisions. And yeah.
I think, again, that's, the questions you brought up lead, I think, right into the financial planning tool. And when you look at the bottom line and you say, as I think you will, oh my gosh, we can't do that,
Right.
then you have to make decisions of what is it that gets cut out. And to me, that is a very strong argument for not continuing right now on the path we're on until we figure out what that whole picture is going to look like. Because
How about, John, I know you're a very, very, very smart, intelligent man. I know you are, and I know that if you set your mind to it, you could come up with some suggestions on working with the library on how we could just get her done. And then work around that for all the other buildings that are there, and what we're gonna do, where we're gonna get the money, what's the plan, et cetera, et cetera. If I'm wrong, but I just really think it's a win if we can get that library done, because we've been talking about a new library for a long time, and they're almost there. What would it take to finish that library and still be able to fit in the rest of this plan that is fluid? I mean, there's no hard wall yet.
well, the select board has seen what it would take to finish it.
I'm sorry?
The select board has seen what it would take to finish it. So,
Okay.
I mean, that's not the decision of our committee.
I'm just asking for you to look at it backwards and see if there isn't something that pops into your mind that says, that's all.
Mr. Brown?
Yes, Mr. Bugby.
Yes. Let me tag along to Katrin's little issue.
Okay.
The select board and myself have been trying to get information from the library trustees for a while, and I actually, this last week, issued a 91A request to them, and they provided a whole bunch of information, and it was a little disconcerting, and I'm wondering if maybe the trustees can address this. It's very disturbing when they keep telling us, they've got 600,000 and they're going to raise another 200,000 to get 800,000. But the information they provided with us so far is their cost to do what they are proposing is almost $1,050,000. So that's a big difference. That means they have to raise, a lot of money, $450,000.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm missing something, but I don't think they're ready to go. I think they're way away from getting ready to go. They don't have the funding. And to remove like $250,000, something like that, from their particular project, you're cutting into a significant amount of what they can do in that particular building. So I'm wondering if one of the trustees Maybe I'm missing something, I'll admit that, but based on what we were given, it doesn't look good.
We're gonna find out in a minute, because I'm gonna give them a chance to talk now, if you don't mind. Please,
Thank you.
Thank you.
hold on.
Feels so official. Holy here, right? Here comes Katrina.
If I can remember what to do. Okay, Katrinka Palakia, I'm a library trustee. I live at 114 Wiswell Road. Yes, I wish that maybe any discrepancies you could have asked us before tonight, but that's okay, you're asking them now. And back in January, when we got those budget figures, yes, it was it's $1 million, give or take. And we were pretty emphatic with our architect in Milestone that we couldn't afford that. And that we could afford, we saw 800,000 as very reasonable. We thought, we had 600,000 more, in hand through our various accounts and donations. I could see raising between 200,000 to 300,000 is possible, but I'm very, maybe it'll happen, but I'm very unclear that we could raise 500,000. So we haven't gone back and done drawings. As I keep saying, and I'll say it again, we have not gotten the final buildable drawings, which from the real budget would come from. This wasn't estimated, and everything's in, all the landscaping is in there. We're gonna wait and do the landscaping, but we've been very clear that we can't afford that, which, that's, I don't know what else to tell you. And, just a second. So we've also talked, I'll forget, we have also talked about doing it in phases as we can afford it. Epsom Library did that. It took a while, but they did something, they paid for it, they raised money, they did the next thing. Now, I'm not talking about leaving a half-built library, and being out there with my tin cup. I'm not talking about that. But we've talked about, should we do the addition first? Should we then do the children's area, get that floor? That is actually one of the first things to do, so we have the flexibility. Get the basement going. We have several areas. Maybe the addition should come last. These are some, if we can't get it down to the 800,000, which, given the way construction costs are going right now, seems even more Herculean task, then we will have some hard decisions to make. What can we put off? What can we postpone? These are things we're talking about and we'll talk about. Okay. But we can't fundraise until we got, a project that really shows signs of going and not waiting
Forever.
for a septic or, decision or a well decision or, it's good to know about those, and it's good that everybody knows what other people are planning and what has to be done and have input.
Okay, if I may.
Yes, please.
Selectman Bugby mentioned, and I saw the list of the 91A requests. There was like 4 or 5 different subjects requesting the information from the library. Is that right, Scott?
Yep, yes, it was.
And how much have you received?
Well, I still think we're missing some things, but I haven't had a chance to get back to the trustees. The THRC just met, and then I went on my trip, so.
Okay, all right. I would simply ask that, as much as possible, that you could give them that information.
We have
We
given
have
every file.
We have everything.
Every file.
Okay, they say, their response is they've done that.
Well,
So,
in the
we'll wait.
conversation that the THRC had, there's other things that their architects were referencing, which we did not get. And
What?
when I
Okay.
return, we'll create the list and send it to them and see what happens.
Okay, all right.
Well, to the vet, we're happy to send things. You don't even need to, put it under a 91 request. That's, this, when Scott asked about it at first, I wasn't even sure what at conservation, I wasn't even sure what. I thought he wanted the floor plan. We kept saying, we've sent that to you. But, you know, as far as I know, we sent everything Tuesday. Tuesday, was it, Annie?
Well, everybody's worked hard on this project. I mean, certainly going back even before the TCVC, we're working on this project.
2006.
And I think it would just would be great if we could at least bring the library to fruition and crack a bottle of champagne and say, look what we did. And then move on to the rest of town center, however it's gonna look. I mean, we don't know. So anyway, okay.
Do the amounts?
We'll look forward to you coming home, Scott, and tell us what it is what else you need.
I'm just curious, the amounts that we saw, does that include the cost for the flooring and the redoing the inside?
That's everything.
So that's
yeah.
everything
That would be the landscaping. I mean, and these are things, I mean, it's good to have, they have to do that.
right.
Because you need the total, but, you know, landscaping, we plan to get that donated, for
Right.
example, and other things, and furniture, we're buying some furniture now ahead of time that we can use now, but which we'll use in the building, or in the, you know, the remodeled part. So, yes, it can be whittled down.
All right.
Is there anything else?
Are there any things that we could start on now as we're waiting for the addition and that figured out? Is there anything that can go forward, or is it all just waiting to fall in place with each other?
You know, we haven't really talked about, one of the first things that needs to be done, we have to reinforce the floor
Right.
in the schoolhouse, because right now we can't move, you know, for us to renovate, we have to be able to move things around, and that floor can't take stacks.
Right.
It's already, so that's one of the things, that's why we're doing the grant, hopefully for a Moose Plate grant to get, you know, some help with that. That is one of the first things, and I would say the basement, the existing basement, if we could, you know, get the lift in there to make that ADA compliant, we could move stacks down. I mean, yes, there is stuff we can do.
Is there anything we can help in those areas? Well, I just feel like we're so tied up. If there's things that we can do to help, I mean, those are things that need to happen regardless of what happens,
Oh, yeah.
no matter
Yeah.
what.
I mean, in some ways it makes sense to build the addition first, because then the space is there and you can move things into it. I mean, we talked about that 3 years ago with
Right.
La Valley. That was, you know, one of the things that made sense. But we can reorder priorities.
Okay.
We're flexible, we're willing to, we want to do something, we
Absolutely.
want to work with everybody to get
Absolutely.
it going, so.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, John?
The question for the board is, right now you have a project that's estimated at $1,056,900 plus. It's already been identified that there were many features taken out of the previous design, at least some of which need to be put back. So, although you may be talking about there's things we could do to reduce the price, there's also things you have to do that are going to increase the price. And I understand you want to make progress, but you're asking about, can we make progress on this $1,057,000 project that we don't have the money for now, and we don't have the money for anything else that we're contemplating. And Select Person Casper just mentioned these old buildings that maybe we shouldn't be keeping. I don't know, but there's a historic building there, and then there's there are 3 other additions. Is that in the same category?
Yes, it's depends on what the plan
Okay.
is.
So,
Okay. Any other?
Comments or thoughts or?
Okay. We're gonna move
Do you
on.
have
Well,
anything else?
I'm sorry, Scott, you have something you want to say?
Yeah, well, just in terms of I'm only back a year. The THRC needs direction. Our charge terminates at the end of this month, so we are planning to come back on the 28th with a revised charge, but should be based on what the board decides in terms of what we presented today. How do we proceed? The THRC is looking for direction from the board. There's 2 specific questions in terms of policies for different things. That needs to come from the board. And also, how do you want us to proceed in terms of moving this whole thing forward?
Well, I think it's, I won't get into a big argument with you tonight, but
Okay.
the fact is, you know, the board can't tell you what the direction's gonna be, and you can't necessarily tell us what everything's gonna be. I think we have to sit down together and come up with an agreement on how we're gonna get from A to B. The board can't tell you. Okay, I mean, we don't have all the information, et cetera, that you have. So we need to do it together. We need to come up with the direction, the right way to go that we can agree to, and then go forward with. I don't know how else to do it.
I'd also like to say that I think that it's challenging when you are both on the board and you are also the chair of this committee. And I feel that it's very challenging because you're speaking as if you're not one of us. And it's hard because I feel like you have to play an interesting role. I'm wondering if going forward, we might want to think about changing that dynamic and maybe bringing some new faces in to make sure that we're really paying attention to all the needs of the town and giving you the ability to sit here and say what you want as well. I think you're stuck in a very unfortunate position because both feet are in 2 different places and you can't fully put them in either place. So I don't know if there's somebody who is able to be the chair of that committee. I don't know if there's other people in town that we could get that could add some fresh input. I do think that one thing I'm concerned about is that we have people that have been working on this for a very, very long time, and everyone has ideas and a lot of muscle memory about what's happened in the past. I want to make sure we're including people in the town that haven't been asked, people that are hoping to be here for the next several decades and have a lot of skin in the game, and it does matter to them. So I think we just need to think a little bit more about how we're doing this going forward.
You need to come back to New Hampshire and we'll sit down and talk.
After this particular meeting, I might stay here for another week.
All right.
Okay, all right.
Can I just say one thing?
Yes.
Certainly.
And I kind of agree with Katrin in terms of this whole thing. I kind of wear 2 hats.
Yes.
And I try to walk a line. But the thing is, there's certain things the board should be doing, and there's certain things the THRC should be doing.
Correct.
And I think, and I won't argue with Mr. Brown, but I'll just state, the policy comes from the board. That's where policy comes from. That's what our job is. Policy does not come from the THRC. We do what the board wants. We're one of the committees of the board. So I will disagree with you, Mr. Brown, in terms of that.
Of course you
I don't
would.
mind I don't mind in terms of the THRC don't mind in terms of giving you in terms of information and stuff like that, but policy comes from the board. So I will stop with that and we will continue this discussion on the
Fabulous.
28th.
Okay, no problem. I'll
I
be
just want
happy
you to
to give policy direction.
Perfect. And I want you to be fully part of that board with us because there are only 2 of us and that is not enough.
Yes, but you 2 are awesome.
Nice. All right. So we once again can get a little further down the road.
Yes, the can has been kicked down the road again.
Yep.
Okay. All right, we're gonna move on.
Yeah,
Two.
there are much more. My M&Ms are running out here. Hurry up.
Okay.
All right.
Ms. Julie Glover, Town Administrator. You're up.
So, as Chairman, thank you, as Chairman Brown stated at the start of the meeting, this is the first time we've been in person since March of 2020. couple of things are different tonight from the last time we met in person. First off, we have a fancy conference phone system that's tied into the microphones courtesy of Back Bay Networks. So thank you very much for setting that up for us so Mr. Bugby could fully participate. The other thing that Back Bay is doing for us tonight is facilitating a live stream of this meeting. That's not something that we did prior to March of 2020. We recorded the meetings and then placed the videos online. We decided to do that for tonight to kind of transition the members of the public who, you know, may not have been aware that we are meeting in person now. So I think that the board, we need to talk about what we want to do going forward. If the board likes the idea, if the public likes the idea of live streaming, we're going to have to put together what the costs are going to be to do that on our own going forward. Because we're going to have a staff person facilitate that. So I don't know that you necessarily have to decide tonight, unless you want to decide tonight. Maybe we see how many people watched it and try to make some decision as to whether we think it's valuable going forward. Plus, I know you will need to know what the costs are. So I'll try to get those together for the next meeting.
Okay.
Can you give us some numbers in terms of who watches the archive stream?
I think that we can see how many times they're watched. The problem with that is, for example, if I watched the last meeting 6 times, it's gonna record that as a 6, not as just one person. So, but yeah, I think we could get numbers for that.
Well, there's some value to that as well.
Yeah.
Just as long as we understand the numbers could be, you know, somebody watching it, if there's 100 watches, but could be one person watches 100 times.
Correct.
Or it could be 100 people watching it once.
We should get them home.
We understand that, but.
Yes. It was Denise trying to do the minutes off of the recording.
There you go.
She had to watch it,
Yeah.
she has to watch it multiple times.
Oh my gosh.
So that's something I'd like to get a decision on, quite frankly, if we can, at the next meeting, so we know what to do moving forward. Employee, did you have a question?
Well, I'm wondering, if we do live stream and we have this phone, would people be able to watch live stream and then call in? I guess I'm always looking for how we can make sure that the public's participating.
I think that would be unwieldy,
Okay.
because we wouldn't know who was called, you know, we
Right.
wouldn't even have a visual. That would be a little unwieldy for us. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that there are communities, larger communities, who have found a way to have both the in-person with the select board or the town council, and also kind of maintain the Zoom ability, if you will. I'm not sure yet there. So. Employee bonuses. So the board may recall that at the last meeting, Chief Dronsfield asked the board if the department heads could determine how to allocate the money for the employee bonuses for fiscal '22, and the board agreed. After that, some information was sent to the department heads, and for a variety of reasons, there were just some discrepancies in who would be getting a bonus and who wouldn't be getting a bonus. So at this time, the department heads from the police, fire, and public works are asking for a total of $2,250 in additional bonus funds, plus there's $111 that would have to go towards FICA for those, because they are FICA eligible, although not New Hampshire retirement eligible. So you also had in your packet where those funds would be allocated, the additional funds would be allocated.
Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and make a motion. I move to grant the additional funds requested by the police, fire, and public works department heads to go towards their FY '22 employee bonus allocations. Can I get a second?
I will second that.
Motion is seconded.
Discussion?
Discussion?
Yes, discussion, go ahead.
I'm not in favor of this. The board sets the fund and then we allocate it. So I'm not in favor of this particular motion at this time, and I will be voting no.
Okay,
fine.
I'm not surprised.
I don't think that
Okay.
we can promise something and not pay for it, and I also think that we need to make sure that people at the transfer station are included going forward on,
Yeah, but
on all those
Yes,
things.
but we didn't promise this particular money, we only promised will be allocated into the pool, Katrin.
Got
So
it.
I will agree to disagree with you.
That's fine.
Okay.
We need a roll call vote.
Yeah.
Got roll call vote required. Select person Casper,
Yes.
select person Bugby,
No,
select person Brown, yes. Motion passes.
All right, thank you. I want to give a brief update on what we know so far about the American Rescue Plan Act's local fiscal recovery funds. I'd like going forward to just refer to them as the ARPA funds because it's just easier to say. As you know, the U.S. Treasury Department issued interim final rules, which is a government oxymoron, if ever there was one.
Maybe.
But the rules right now are interim, although they are quite lengthy. And there have been a number of frequently asked question documents that have been issued to try to clarify some of it. So the state of New Hampshire received the state's allocation on June 1st. That included the funds for the NEUs, which are the non-entitlement units of government, of which Lee is one. I won't get into why we're an NEU,
Makes sense.
we are. The Gopher, some of you recall the Gopher office, which dealt with how to distribute the CARES Act funds, which was the last go-around of federal funding relative to the COVID-19 pandemic, is going to issue an application by June 18th because we have to indicate whether or not we want to accept the funds. We can refuse them, in which case they go back to the state. We will have until August 18th to make a decision on that. And then Gopher will distribute the funds. Gopher is the governor's office of funding something recovery. I can't even remember anymore what it was because that was
Why would we not accept this?
so 2020. There are towns that chose not to accept the CARES Act money. They just simply did not want federal money.
Okay.
We may determine after going through the rules that there is not a way that we can spend the money.
Okay.
So there may be reasons.
Sure.
You know, there's no such thing as
We need
free
money,
lunch,
I want
as
money.
my father used to say.
Yep.
So Lee's total distribution will be, if we accept all of the funds and can spend all of the funds, is $478,327. The first tranche, and yes, I had to look that word up because they can't say distribution, they had to use the word tranche, is, which means just the first half. We're getting this in two distributions. So the first one would be $239,163.50. The second would be distributed, I think, June 1st of 2022. So there are 4 general ways that we can spend the money. The first is to respond to the public health emergency with respect to COVID-19 or its negative economic impacts. That includes assistance to households, small businesses, and nonprofits, and aid to impacted industries such as tourism, travel, and hospitality. So in other words, it's not just whether the town of Lee can use the money for itself. We also have the ability to distribute it to businesses and households in the community. But what I'm going to talk about from this point forward is just geared towards if the town was going to spend the money for itself.
Okay.
I will say this, that if the town decides that we want to distribute money to households or businesses, we remain responsible for those businesses and individuals accepting and spending the money in accordance with the rules.
Got it.
So if it's determined that we give the money to business X, and business X doesn't really deserve the money, we're on the hook for that.
Got it.
So again, just focusing on if the town was going to accept the money and spend it. So under A, it has to tie directly to the COVID-19 pandemic. But they do allow capital investments in public facilities to meet pandemic operational needs. We may be able, under that provision, to pay for the lease payments for the second 2 years of the Daily Building.
Great.
Because as everybody remembers, we moved into the Daily Building because we could not make Town Hall COVID safe for either the employees or the public.
Yep.
In addition, one of the general caveats of this ARPA funding is if it was an acceptable use with the CARES Act money, then generally speaking, it would be an acceptable use with this funding, and I believe that lease payments were acceptable under the CARES Act money.
Great.
It also allows for adaptations to public buildings to implement COVID-19 mitigation tactics. You know, we may be able to do something with the ventilation system in this building, a revamp of the heating and cooling system, which it needs anyway.
It
And I'm gonna get to that later.
Absolutely.
The second way that the money can be spent is to be used by, to provide premium pay to eligible workers performing essential work during the public health emergency, or to provide grants to third-party employers with eligible workers performing essential work. These are workers who have been and continue to be relied on to maintain continuity of operations of essential critical infrastructure sectors, including those who are critical in protecting the health and well-being of their communities: healthcare, public health and safety, childcare, education, sanitation, transportation, food production. It defines essential work as work involving regular in-person interactions or regular physical handling of items that were also handled by others. They recognize that by defining premium pay means an amount up to $13 per hour in addition to their regular wages. In an aggregate amount not to exceed $25,000 per eligible worker. Any such premium pay should prioritize compensation of those lower income eligible workers that perform essential work. This can be both retrospective and prospective. Again, there is another caveat, and I will get to that also a little later, but for this funding, we could pay eligible essential workers back to the start of the pandemic in March of 2020. For the first one that I talked about, the negative health and economic impact, it has to be for costs that were incurred after March 3rd of 2021. So.
But the back pay could include the library employees as well as safety complex and all the other, as well as finance employees, correct?
As long as they meet the definition of regular in-person interactions or regular physical handling of items during the pandemic.
So library books,
I mean, that would
trash.
certainly apply to.
Yeah, absolutely.
It would also apply to the town clerk, tax collector.
Yes.
Yes, I was just gonna say that too, yeah.
And the transfer station employees.
Yep.
You may recall that with the, well, it wasn't CARES Act money because it was different money, but police and fire employees received a stipend, they called it. I
Right.
think it was 6 or 8 weeks,
Mhm.
fairly early on in the
Yeah.
pandemic.
Okay.
So the third way that the money can be used is for the provision of government services to the extent of the reduction in revenue experienced due to the COVID-19 public health emergency. And the reduction in revenue is measured relative to the revenue collected in the most recent full fiscal year prior to the emergency. So the tax collector and I looked at our revenue, and it does not look to us that we lost revenue, which is a good thing.
Good for the people who leave.
It's a
That was
good
one of
thing.
that was one of our concerns
Right,
going into it, that we might.
But it means, just for example, that we can't, and you can use that funding for infrastructure projects. So in other words, let's just suppose that we had lost $1 million in revenue.
Mhm.
We could turn around and use that money to build the library or to renovate town hall.
But we'd also be $1 million short in our
But we'd be
budget
$1
as
million
well.
short, right. So it doesn't look like we're gonna be able to use the funds under that category.
Okay.
And then the last general category is to make necessary improvements in water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. And they define broadband infrastructure as bringing 100 Mbps service to areas of the town that may not have
Right,
any service.
Did we determine if there are any parts of town
I
that don't have
haven't
service?
gotten
Okay.
that answer yet. But, again, further in the definition of this, if they have any wired connection to the internet, then it doesn't qualify. So in other words, if someone doesn't have a Comcast connection, but they have connection to the internet through the telephone company, then they are not unserved when it comes to broadband.
Well, how about like the septic system, et cetera, et cetera?
Well, the town, this one's not as entirely clear to me as to the projects.
It would be great if we could include the septic and take that
Right,
off the payment. And also this issue with the Lamprey,
But-
that's what I was asking about.
Yeah, so we're gonna have to keep an eye on that one. I know that managing stormwater is one of the ways.
Which we definitely
Well, we
have
definitely
plenty of
have
projects
issues
there.
here.
Spoke with Steve Bullock about the stormwater system at the transfer station, which may need an overhaul. So there may be ways that we can spend the money there. So again, except for the premium pay and assistance to households, I think under the first category, any expenses must have been incurred after March 3rd, 2021. So funds can't be used to pay us back
Right.
for expenses that we made prior to that date. And the funds have to be obligated, incurred by December 31st of 2024 and spent no later than December 31st of 2026. So,
We can do that.
so
problem.
we do have, we do have time to look at all of this. I am assuming, although I've not read this definitively, that if we don't spend all the money, there isn't any kind of
But we will spend.
punishment for that, that the money would, I'm assuming, go back to the state, just like if we refused it in the first place. So there are definitely still things that we need to parse out. There's a webinar on June 16th, really more specifically about how we get the money and.
Is that something that I could go back on to the other ones too?
Yeah, I can send you the link
Yeah,
to that
please.
one.
That'd be great.
It's through NHMA and maybe NLC.
I think
That's
maybe I already said it.
June 16th in the afternoon, so we'll,
Okay.
we get information, I get information every day about this, so it's just gonna be something that we're gonna have to
The more minds on it, the better.
continue to stay on top of. So, any questions?
Yes, Julie,
Yeah,
if we came up with a list of things that we want to do, let's say whatever it is,
right.
is there somebody you can call and say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. or Miss or whatever, we were thinking about doing this? Can there be somebody that you can call and contact to say, yeah, that would meet it, or no, that's
Not-
not really going to cut it for that particular?
Not right now that I know of,
That's the hard part.
because
Okay.
the state can't impose any rules, so
Okay.
this is all coming from the federal government who's making the rules. The state can't change the rules or come up with their own rules, so I don't know if the state is gonna be trying to help us with, we weren't allowed to ask with the CARES Act money. We couldn't say, will you approve this? They didn't approve anything ahead of time. It was always after the fact.
We could send in the request.
I think you're gonna find a lot of guidelines coming out
Yeah.
as this gets to where they're distributing the bucks.
Right, but in answer to his question, there isn't anyone right now that I could call and ask
Yeah.
specific questions of. It's just, we have to keep reviewing all of the material, and
Yeah.
somebody out there may prove to be the expert on this and know the answers to everything. There is a reporting component to it, because we are an NEU, we'd only have to, I think, issue a report once a year, but I think the first one is due by October, which
Wow, okay.
seems a little fast.
But that could happen for pay and things like that,
Right.
that need to get
Yeah.
done right away.
Yeah. So if the board, certainly the easiest one is the premium pay,
Yes.
because that seems pretty clear that we can use the money that way.
I agree.
So the board may want to start thinking about, the department heads might want to start thinking about how that money might be used and to whom and how much.
Great. How do we start doing that? Okay.
Identify
Let's do it.
identify the people that work for the town that met the definition. So it's work with the public face to face and handled items that were handled by the public.
Great. No?
Okay,
Any other questions?
questions, Scott?
All set.
Okay,
All right. Linda, sorry. Town clerk tax collector, for anybody who doesn't know who the town clerk tax collector is, the planning and zoning administrator and myself, we talked about a Dropbox, as you remember, the TCTC had a Dropbox at the old town hall. And then we kind of developed we had our big mailbox through the time in COVID when we were still at town hall. And we had talked about a Dropbox early on with the Daily Building. It kind of got lost in the fog of war, if you will. But we feel that it would be pretty helpful now to have a Dropbox. So we've looked at a couple of different ones. And I think I put a picture of what we'd like to get.
Could that be included in one of these purchases because it handles? No, okay.
It's not COVID related.
Got it.
So, and it's less, I think it's gonna be less than $1,000. We are going to be asking the Public Works Department to install the concrete pad.
Great.
Fasten it down too, because we don't wanna just stick the box out there on the grass. I think the location that we determined for it, if you are facing the front of the building, it would be on the corner to the right of the front door, which is kind of where the parking lot turns around to the side. Because remember, and it's gonna be drive up, which I think the residents are really gonna appreciate.
I agree.
Because you may remember that we did get our driveway permit finally, to use the Route 125
I
entrance.
didn't know when we did. I'm
We
glad to hear
did.
that.
And Mr. Daly just has to make some improvements or changes to the front entrance to make DOT happy. So once that happens, people will be driving in
Fabulous.
the front way. So we felt that it made sense to put the mailbox there as they're coming around the corner.
Somersworth has, you can collect your taxes drive up, or you can pay your taxes drive up.
Well, because the building used to be a bank,
Oh.
so it kind of lent itself,
Something to think about when we're talking
If
about the
we-
buildings.
yeah, a driveway window. Well, yeah. Hampton might have that, because they are also in a former bank
It's just a
building.
lovely way, especially if there's an issue like COVID and that kind of thing, it
Yep.
just, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And if it's something you can plan ahead.
So I'm assuming that the board has no objections to putting a Dropbox?
no,
What
I'm
are,
fine.
what are the things that we need in the Dropbox, things people can't drop off because they're not open, that kind of thing?
People just, even when we're open, they just want to drop stuff off.
This
Okay.
is for our office too.
Yeah, it's for all of
because
us.
When they
Training,
use the
whatever.
key to use this building, I need a place for them to drop it when
Oh,
they're done.
perfect, okay, so things that you can have.
Tax payments, car registrations, somebody dropping off plans for planning and zoning or the building inspector, maybe they're doing it off hours.
Are there any risks? Would it be have a camera by it? Are there any risks to having this kind of
I
thing?
mean, I know we have cameras outside, I guess we could talk about repositioning or adding another one.
I would hate for something to be dropped off that's not safe and have, I don't know, the person
Never
doing
had
it.
an issue
I
before.
mean,
but
we
you're
never
right.
had an
I
issue
mean,
with the Dropbox.
You can have a shooter at the market basket
No.
shooter either,
No.
so. So I just want to make sure that we have a way to
Yeah.
be careful and
Yeah.
to keep everyone safe.
Yeah.
So.
So is this box like the one the library has for returned books?
No, because it's square or rectangular, because the town clerk
So
tax
different.
collector was concerned that if it was the shape of a US mailbox, people would
The
confuse
mail.
it for a US mailbox, even though it's gonna be a different color and it's gonna say Dropbox on it and it's gonna have the town seal on it.
And the picture is in,
Right.
there's a picture of it in your notes
Yeah.
that you got.
Yes,
I must have missed it because I don't remember
It's
seeing
the
it.
last page of the,
yeah.
Oh, maybe I didn't go that far.
Yeah, you're
But the
right.
thing is, I thought there was an issue in terms of fire or something like that. If somebody puts something in to burn, then it's not gonna burn down the building. And I vaguely remember the library, and that's why they had to buy the box they had.
this one's all
So
metal
is this something
wrapped up.
All metal.
oh, okay.
Yeah, that's
I
what
don't
you need all
know,
metal.
is it something that the fire chief has looked at? Just,
No, but we can talk to him about it.
I just vaguely remember the library had to go through this, and they had to get a special box or
Should
something.
we show the public the picture? It's a box.
The library's here and they're not remembering any special,
Just metal, right?
Just had to be metal.
it's just a metal box.
Okay, all right, fair enough.
And you don't have it in the building because incendiary devices can go
Right.
into the building.
Exactly, that's exactly the concern. Okay.
So it's-
Okay, where
That was
are
you've
we?
taken care of.
Miscellaneous?
As I mentioned earlier in the discussion, the fiscal '21 health insurance budget is going to go over. You may also, well, we used to put some extra money in there for things like people changing their plans or getting married or coming off of but we haven't done that for a number of years, so, which means, you know, we may or may not have some issues with the fiscal '22 budget because it's the people that we have now or the people that we'll have going into
It's
fiscal
not planned,
'22.
exactly.
How much is it expected to be over?
It might be $10,000. I think that they're in the personnel budget, that there's other line
Yeah.
items that are underspent that will cover it.
That's what I was gonna ask about, yeah.
But I've
Well,
never
usually-
seen the personnel budget this close.
Yeah,
Never,
yeah.
never.
It's kind of rough.
Usually we're like $200,000-300,000 under that we put into the unassigned fund balance, so
Right.
I think we should be okay.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything that's.
Oh, we
big
will
to
be
change.
okay globally,
Right,
yes.
it's just making sure we
It's
have
just,
that,
the other account that is awfully close to being overspent is the government buildings account, which is not surprising, because we're now
Yep.
supporting more buildings than we had anticipated when we put the budget together. In addition,
Yep.
the public safety complex, we have spent at least $3,000 in the last 6 weeks on emergency repairs. Some of it was for the HVAC system, and
Yep.
$1,354, I hesitate to even talk about this publicly, had to be spent on pumping out the tanks and the lines because things are being placed down the toilets that are not supposed to be placed.
Didn't we have this problem a few years ago as well?
Yes.
So,
What
well, we know who it is because the building's been closed to the public for a while.
I made
so-
that point to the police chief and fire chief, so I,
We
Yeah.
can discuss some ideas later, maybe.
I already suggested
Great.
bidets. So, anyway, that was, you know, that maintenance and repair budget is not very large for the number of buildings that we have.
And again, we are not maintaining and repairing them and anywhere close to the necessary level.
I know that we had talked about last year, about possibly establishing a capital reserve fund for building maintenance,
Yes.
and the then select board decided against it. Maybe that's something we talk
And
about
then people
again.
ran that were mad about it, and I think we could definitely talk about it again.
So then, maybe we talk about that again.
Yes, please, let's do that, put it on the next agenda, because that's, yeah.
And just while we're talking about building maintenance, I spoke to Bill Stevens today about the clapboards on the town hall.
Oh, yep,
So he's gonna fix the ones that are immediately falling off.
Yep.
But he's saying that the whole building probably needs to be re-sided, or certainly
Yeah.
that one side, so.
Did you have a discussion with him? Because the thing that he and I discussed in Market Basket, the tool shed, and all these things we're talking about, nothing's happened in tool shed, at least that we've talked about recently. That particular building has lead paint.
Right, well,
And he said he's not comfortable doing that, so
As he should be.
I think we need to look into what that would cost to have a firm come in and do whatever it needs to do and get that building repainted so
well,
we're taking care of it.
we did that a few years ago,
Right.
and it was gonna be I don't know,
I forget what it was.
$20,000 because you have to get a lead paint
Right.
specialist.
Yep.
And the then board decided not to do it because we don't have to paint it. In other words, there's no requirement that we
Right.
get the lead paint off it. So the
You either
board
care for it or you
decided
don't.
to do nothing, so.
Yeah, that's not.
So I will dig that up, but we can assume that
Okay.
it's gonna cost more than it was gonna cost 2 or 3 years
You
ago.
would think so. Yep, all right.
So,
But I think this gets back to the whole maintenance issue with all of our buildings.
right.
I think, in my personal opinion, we've been dropping the ball for years, and I think we need to find out what that particular, plan is, so that we maintain these particular structures. And I think that calls into question in terms of what Katrin brought up in terms, do we keep all these buildings, we let some of them go? I think that's a broader question, but we
Absolutely.
need to start maintaining these buildings by setting up a fund for them, so.
I think you're absolutely right. I think we need to look hard at what buildings we keep.
Yeah, and if we're not, if we decide that they're not necessary, but some other group decides, it's one thing we could talk about if somebody takes on that expense, but I think just continuing to hold that expense, it's like buying a dog and not paying for the vet bill. It's just not okay.
People do that, though, Katrin.
Yeah, I know,
They do
it
that.
makes, that's the highest suicide rate out there, so anyway.
Let's-
I'm all set.
Great.
You're all done?
All done.
All right. So now we are down to the consent agenda. So I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented. Can I get a second?
I second that.
Roll call vote, Selectman Bugby,
Yes,
Selectman Casper, Selectperson Casper,
Yes.
Selectman Brown, yes, motion passes. Number 9, miscellaneous unfinished business. Anybody?
No, but the board's here, so remember, you sign everything while you're here.
Oh, how exciting, my first time, I didn't bring a pen.
I've got
did somebody go through the manifest?
Yes.
I did, yes, I did, I've been doing my duty. I'm a good
Yay.
manifest signer.
Whether or not we're gonna do that.
Yay!
Here, there's a second page on that.
How many is there?
Oh, never mind, just print it. So we got it.
Yeah, ask lots of questions, Mr. Bugby, so you're covered.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by the price of wood.
Huh?
The price of wood is
Yeah.
fascinating. Did not realize pine got so valuable.
Yep.
Here, you start passing them to me and I can
Go
go while
ahead,
you're,
go ahead.
while you're
Yes,
checking.
You're right, you're right. Okay, these are all right.
Do you have to be able to understand my signature or is it just, all right, because nobody can read that.
Just big enough and dark enough.
Big enough and dark enough, all right, I hope that one works.
I think I like this remote stuff. I don't have to do any work.
Yeah, that's funny, you're coming back. How often do you have to go
I
away?
didn't say that.
How
It's quite
often,
nice out here.
how often are you gonna be away, Mr. Bugby?
Oh, probably every week now.
Week. I'm sure enough being in that one.
Was I supposed to, oh dear. Was I not supposed to
Is
sign
that
this?
in the wrong place?
Yep, is this one that?
Uh-oh.
I just signed the yellow
Oh,
one, I
that's a-
signed.
That's a rookie mistake.
Signature and ink of owner or corporate officer.
Oh.
Okay, sorry. I just got excited. I was just signing away.
Where did this come from?
That just goes with that.
Okay, I apologize. You can, I don't know, should I
Goes
wait
with
here?
this. It goes with that?
We'll figure it out. All right,
And that?
sorry guys.
Okay.
It's the new one, always causing trouble. Thank you, sorry.
There's something else.
I've been trained to look for highlights.
But who put in there something else? Is it your signature?
Yeah, okay, great. I'll tell you the story one day. There's a story behind my horrible signature. Mr. Brown, you have a very, I can't even understand who you are.
What's the matter?
You have a great signature. I can actually make out the letters.
You can't
I'm
make them
impressed. No,
out?
I'm impressed.
You can't, oh,
Yes.
you can make them
Saying
out.
you do a
Good,
good
thank you. Well, kudos for me. Good night.
Nice.
All right, so. Any miscellaneous unfinished business? I don't think so.
Do you accept public comment at the end of a meeting?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I'll make one.
Please.
We would love to hear it. Oh, sorry, thank you. Yes, thank you for sharing your mind.
Patricia Jenkins, 9 Harvey Mill Road, South Lee. I'm a little concerned. Well, you may have noticed that when the town center, I've sort of been around for that for a little while. And I'm remembering back when we first started it, the town decision for doing the town center was to redo the town hall. And the town hall was considered an important building in town, and the town wanted to keep it. So I'm a little disturbed about this, trying to figure out whether people want the town hall or not.
I apologize. I definitely was leaning towards all the buildings, not necessarily.
Yes,
I apologize.
and a building that's run down, people are going to say no. So that's disturbing. But the first decision that was made and accepted in this whole process was that we would move the library out of the buildings that weren't really suited for a library, so that we could move the town hall things into the library and redo the town hall. And now, after all of this that we've been through, we've come to a place where maybe we'll get rid of the town hall. The library is trying to make do, really, and put additions on with a building that isn't really suited for a library. And they should have a rectangular building with sight lines, and they can do whatever they want with the inside. And the library building is set up in little units, which, if you think about town offices, is little units. And it could be redone as town offices. And we would get rid of all of this problem that it's gonna cost money, but look how much more money it's costing now than if we'd done it when we first started. So I'm just a citizen making an observation. Please don't lose sight of what our town is and what our town needs. And Mr. Brown, I totally agree with you. We need a town center that's well taken care of and has shutters and looks nice, or not shutters and looks nice, because we need town pride.
Absolutely.
And our buildings are not showing any pride at all. And we're gonna lose them if we don't build it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I actually spent a great deal of my weekend looking into the cost of making the library the new building. Offices, the other building is a little tricky because new libraries tend to cost more per square foot than town office space. But I do think it's a very valid point, and I think that's the concern, is what is the right path forward? How do we save the buildings and use them the best that can be? And I really think all those points need to be taken into consideration. So thank you.
Okay, at this time, I'm
Did you
sorry,
have something,
Scott,
Mr.
go ahead.
Hardwick?
I didn't say anything.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I thought you did, I'm sorry. Well, something came up out of that phone, I don't know what it was. And anyway, I'm gonna have to ask everybody to vacate, if you would, the room. We have to go into a non-public session.
Well, it's because of the phone.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
Thank you
my
everyone
fault.
for coming and being here tonight.
Oh, and then I'll
I still have
text
all
you.
those floor plans.
It was a great idea.
We paid
Thank
lots
you,
of money
thank
for
you.
such a.
Yeah.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you,
Good
John.
night, Scott.
Hello? Yeah, you're there, you're there.
Oh, just close the door behind you.
Do you want this closed?
Thank you. See, Mr. Brown, if we had
bring you a drink.
Huh, we should think about that. All right.
Do we get to save what happens?
We're not sealing the minutes, so sure. So the select board has voted to promote you to the title of office manager effective immediately.
So you need to order a new phone for
Believe
yourself as
me, you
well.
are very much
You
appreciated,
really
every
are.
day, every day.
Thank you.
Yes.
Very much.
Well, you know, when she's there.
Oh, burn! Wow, okay.
That's only because of lately.
I
But look at
remember-
me, I'm here tonight.
You know I'm
I
just
know,
kidding.
I
You
know,
know
I
I'm
know.
just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I don't remember you being on any other time I've been a selection person, so.
Yeah.
Okay, are we good? Scott, anything?
No, motion to adjourn.
Okay, I'll adjourn.
All right,
Thank
thank you,
you.
everyone. Do you want these little clippies back? What do we do with
Little
these?
clippies?
What that
They
is?
came with
Oh,
the-
yes.
Oh, little
Yes.
clippies. Correct.
Thank you.
Little clippies.
We hoard office.
I was gonna say, this is an
supplies.
office supply. I'm a Libra,